Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is September 28th, 2022. This is your daily Ukraine update, and we are going to be asking ourselves, is anything going to plan for Russia? And are any of its strategies going to work? Let's get into it. Okay, first, when we look at the tactical map, you can see there's changes all across the front, right? We can look first up here near Kupiansk. We'll go top to bottom. And as you can see here, that the Russians have kind of tried to push back. You can see here, not really that successfully, right? You can see that they kind of pushed back at this Petropavlivka midday yesterday, but it just meant the Ukrainian forces seized, oh God, help me, Holoshkivka. And ultimately, I think the goal of this operation isn't pushing deep into Russian territory. It's to peel them back from this Oskil River. And when we look at it, we can see that they are pretty much succeeding. This beachhead, this small beachhead near Dovorichna, is also within, looks like about 4 or 5 kilometers of other friendly lines. So I think you're going to see Ukrainians try to link this up here and continue to try to peel the Russians off of the Oskil until they can link up with their other forces here. And once they've done that, then a key piece of defensive terrain for Russian forces is going to be out of play. And that's a serious problem for them, especially given the fact that, as you guys can see, Ukrainian forces are also continuing their encirclement of Lyman. You can see they've seized a significantly greater chunk of territory, including the village of Shendrai Holovi. And despite this natural obstacle here sort of cutting things off, you can see that they are really against a rock and a hard place, especially along this front here, right? They're going to know that, again, affecting a river crossing is hard work, and it doesn't seem super likely that Ukrainian forces will do it along this river, the Seversky Donetsk. I'm sorry if I got that one wrong. But you can see here, they're already north of it at Ozerne. And if they can seize Yampil, then Lyman is going to be in a really tight spot, right? Obviously, they can't exfil over water. They need a significant amount of roadway to complete this exfil. And basically, it means they're going to have to walk or drive out through. The Russians will have to drive out of Lyman this way. That'll be the only option open to them. But Russia has made so many bad calls from a tactical perspective right now that it's hard that you worry that they are just going to allow their forces in Lyman to just be eliminated. They really don't seem to have an understanding of preserving their combat power. We can see here, if you remember weeks ago, when Lysychansk became encircled, the Ukrainians made the painful but correct decision to withdraw their forces back to Seversk and preserve their combat power. And it paid dividends because obviously that combat power was free to create their own offensive operations that were much more successful than they would have been simply trying to grind out a fight in Lysychansk. And when we look further south, you can see that Ukrainian forces have actually pushed Ukrainians back away from, God help me, Verkhonokamyanka. Man, they got to seize some villages with fewer syllables, guys. Okay, now you can see that this is unusual in that it's just pushing the Russians straight back. There's not really these aren't battles of maneuver. I mean, so this is a little bit of a salient. So they are being pressured from north, south, and west. But this is a defensive line that the Russians have held for weeks. These should be firmly entrenched positions. But as we've discussed, the Russians have robbed Peter to pay Paul a lot in this conflict, and they have almost certainly farmed out all of their combat effective troops to try to shore up collapsing lines here, to try to shore up the Kherson front, to try to do just about anything that's going to allow them to keep the fight alive. And that means that even if these were good combat troops, effective units, 2 months ago, a month ago, they might not be now. And that's probably why in response to a little bit of pressure, they just dropped back, and they are continuing to drop back. And Ukraine is continuing to push them forward. I mean, you can see now we're talking about, from the outskirts of Lysychansk, we're talking maybe 1,000 meters, maybe a kilometer. Pretty incredible, given that it seemed that Lysychansk had been abandoned just a few weeks ago, honestly. Pretty wild stuff. And then finally, there's just a small sign of progress at the, just a little bit of progress here on the Kherson front. You can see here they actually report that this actually is not reported as a Russian taking back territory. It's that they actually declared this village liberated, and then in the course of clearing operations realized there was actually still a garrison here, which is telling. It means that a lot of these gains are not hard fought building by building clearing operations, that they're actually Russians choosing to withdraw from areas and Ukrainians just simply coming in. You can see here another small chunk of really just open territory. I think this is probably just a map refinement, honestly. But you can see that the only place where the Russian lines seem to be sort of stable is Kherson, but at tremendous, tremendous cost to basically large portions of the remaining Russian territory. And if you think strategically, you have to remember that the original objective of this, right, 6 months ago, the original objective was regime change in Kiev, but that didn't happen. So Russia's secondary objective turned into preserving and creating the DNR and LNR, which are not in Kherson. So not sure. So the fact that this has occupied most of their combat power, I think it's mostly because Russia put a bunch of its combat power here, and now it's committed to the fight, and they really can't withdraw, because I think they're afraid if they try to pull their combat power out, by the time it gets to these other fronts, these other fronts will have collapsed and Kherson will have collapsed. So they may just be truly, truly and verily just stuck in place. Anyway, guys, let's take a quick look at other news that I just sort of find interesting. The sham referendum continues. Well, the votes are in, and predictably, of course, the referenda has declared that between 87 and 99% of residents want to join Russia. A 99% vote is basically impossible. I've literally never seen a polling question that gets 99% of anything. Maybe like even the name block on a test, there's still at least one person who misspells their name or puts their nickname instead of their legal name and gets it wrong. Literally 99% represents, it's just so high that it's fake. Even 87%, even wildly popular popular referenda with no opposition, no meaningful opposition, don't draw those kind of numbers in local elections. Literally you could be like, should we turn the burning tire lot into a park for kids? And that would still get like 75% of the vote, But what's interesting, I think, is that Institute for the Study of War actually thinks that a seizure or annexing the DNR, LNR territories into Russia will allow the forced conscription of Ukrainian civilians into the Russian military as part of their autumn conscription cycle, which is not a theory I've heard posited in other sources. So that is pretty interesting, but they generally suspect that around September 30th is when Russia will declare that the DNR and LNR and other annexed Ukrainian territories are territorially parts of Russia. One other thing I'm going to check out, of course, Ground News. I'd be remiss not to cover this story, since there's always lots of stories going on right now, is the Nord Stream damage. Nord Stream, the primary pipeline that carries, or one of the primary pipelines that carries liquefied natural gas, out of Russia and into Europe has been sabotaged. And what's fascinating is that it's covered really differently depending on the bend of the news sources. As always, guys, Ground News, the link is in the description. Check it out for free. They really help you see the bias inherent in the way the same story can be covered. But when we look at left of center sources, you see that sabotage seems to be the word of the day. Sabotage, 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 right? And two, it says deliberate act or deliberate actions. When we look at right of center sources, you can see the word sabotage never really shows up, right? Deliberate act, deliberate act, deliberate act, deliberate act. See, a deliberate act can be a lot of things. It can be, that's a much broader term that encompasses more than just sabotage, right? A deliberate act could be Russia choosing to shut things down. It could be deliberately neglecting maintenance, maybe. That's a really a much vaguer term than sabotage, which implies positive deliberate action to damage or destroy the pipeline. Anyway, just wanted to talk about that story a little bit and the fact that, you know, it's not clear on how this LNG shortage or natural gas shortage will impact Europe in the medium term now in the coming winter. Anyway, guys, as always, if you want, be sure to check out Ground News. Link is in the description and in a pinned comment. And thanks to my lieutenant tier, patrons. If you guys want to see some uncensored combat video breakdowns, I actually just dropped another video yesterday. Become a member of the Patreon. That's all I got. I'll see you guys in the next one.